Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Peter Husey, and I'm Director of Strategic Deterrent Studies here at the Mitchell Institute, and I'm honored to be joined with my colleagues and friends from ANWA, the Advanced Nuclear Weapons Alliance Deterrence Center, David Sherrington and Jeff Carter. Together, we formed a consortium of sorts, put on a series of seminars dealing solely with NNSA issues, and we did that starting last year with the administrator, which we did at an event in January, and continued this year. And we're honored today to have a number of honored guests. The series is designed to better educate the professional nuclear community, the media, members of Congress, and the public policy organizations that look at nuclear issues and national security issues, and to better inform them of what NNSA does, what your challenges are, what progress you've made, and what your prospects are for the future. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Jeff Carter, and thank him and his colleague, David, for helping us put these together. Over to you, Jeff.
Thank you, Peter, and welcome everyone. We're so pleased that you all could attend our second in a series of 6 forums on the National Nuclear Security Administration, the cornerstone of U.S. strategic nuclear deterrence. Today's forum is entitled NNSA Nuclear Weapons Manufacturing and Test Facilities Mission and Modernization. And we're so fortunate to have a senior leader in the NNSA leading off our discussion today, followed by a distinguished panel of 4 leaders of the NNSA manufacturing and test facilities. I'm Jeff Carter. I'm a co-founder and managing director of the Deterrence Center. I'm joined by my Advanced Nuclear Weapons Alliance Deterrence Center co-founder, David Sherrington, who with Peter Husey will moderate the Q&A portion of today's forum. Our mission at the Deterrence Center is to educate key decision makers and stakeholders on strategic nuclear deterrent modernization effort now underway and continuing over the next 30 years. And we thank our NNSA series sponsors for making today's forum possible. NNSA is again the cornerstone of this modernization effort across the DoD NNSA nuclear deterrent enterprise, and making its modernization essential to maintaining a credible nuclear deterrent now and into the future. I'm delighted to introduce Mr. Michael Thompson, NNSA's Principal Assistant Deputy Administrator for Stockpile Sustainment in the Office of Defense Programs. Mike, we're so pleased you could join us today.
Thanks, Jeff and David and Peter, for the opportunity. Thanks to the panelists and to everybody who's dialed in. So still a year and a half later, we're still getting used to this kind of communication, but I actually think it's a great opportunity to get as many people as we can, even if we're geographically apart. So thanks for the opportunity. So just a couple words from me before I introduce the panel. We are, as Jeff mentioned, we are in NNSA at our labs, plants, and sites. We have a tremendous challenge on our hands. We have an increasing requirement set coming from Department of Defense, primarily Navy and Air Force, as they look to modernize their delivery platforms. We are in line with that, ramping up production modernization across the board. And in many cases, the folks that you'll hear from on the panel are having to manage legacy systems, as well as bringing on new systems and the obvious challenges that represents. So what I thought I'd do, and I think there are some slides that we can share to just orient the folks. We can go on to the next slide, please. Just an overview. So here's just a quick orientation of our 8 sites across the nation. And I would say, you'll hear directly from the 4 production modernization folks that are on the panel, but just a couple of words here. We have 3 national weapons laboratories: Livermore in California, Sandia laboratories, which are located in New Mexico and California, Los Alamos in New Mexico. These are generally speaking the design agencies for either the primary systems in our stockpile, or in the case of Sandia, all things weapons integration in terms of delivering an all-up weapon to the Department of Defense. If you look sort of left to right on the map, we have two headquarters locations, one in Albuquerque, one in Washington, where I'm stationed. I work for Dr. Burden, who's head of the weapons program, who's also acting administrator for NNSA at the moment. I will get to the rest in a minute, but I guess I just want to mention, as you look at each of the sites and look at the highlights of what they do, what I would mention to you is that, you look at the bottom banner, over half of our infrastructure is more than 40 years old, and that's a constant challenge, particularly in an era where we are increasing our expectations for products to DoD. So that represents a clear challenge for us for the next decade or more as we look to deliver the program of record. And this covers the gamut from making primaries to secondaries to non-nuclear components to some of the specialty components that have unique supply chains, et cetera. And that's just a challenge. In some cases, and I'll pick on Stuart's location, Savannah River site, we have an established, well-established mission in tritium operations, but we are looking to add a significant new mission scope for plutonium pit manufacturing in the next 10 years. So lots of work to do, and we'll cover, I'm sure the folks on the panel will cover a little bit about each of their sites, so I won't steal their thunder. Next slide, please. So the first four sites are our weapons laboratories in Nevada. I won't say anything more about the weapons laboratories, but you can see some of the more detailed statistics. Design agency work primarily when it comes to defense programs missions. Los Alamos is a key for us for nuclear pit manufacturing. And you see the stats for Livermore and Sandia. What I do want to spend a minute on, and as I introduce each speaker, I'll just show you their respective statistics. We have with us our first panelist, Mark Martinez. He's the president of Mission Support and Test Services, MSTS, which is the management and operating contractor for the Nevada National Security Site. Many of you might remember, we used to call it the Nevada Test Site years ago. Mark comes to us with over 30 years of experience in this type of work. He has, prior to coming to Nevada as the president, he was the vice president for business and operations at the Livermore Laboratory in California. And he has a very strong track record in operating user facilities, which is largely speaking what Nevada has become. For us in defense programs, it is a source of great importance in terms of getting some necessary subcritical experimental data that we can use to inform our certification of the stockpile and some of the future systems that are coming down the pipe. So Mark will talk more. The one thing I'll note, and you'll see on Mark's, I think I saw it earlier, he is a graduate of Brigham Young University. You saw the logo on his screen there. So he's a proud Cougar. And I'm going to try to show all the, did a little homework, and some of you have some obscure mascots from your alma mater, which it took a little while to find them all out. So next slide, please. So Michelle Reichert is with us. The next two sites that you see, Pantex and Y12, are managed by Consolidated Nuclear Services. That is the organization that Michelle is president of. Pantex is all things full up round for us. So in other words, all the piece parts, both nuclear and non-nuclear, come to Amarillo from different locations. Amarillo is the place for weapons assembly and disassembly for the complex. It's also our high explosive center of excellence. Michelle leads that organization, as well as the Y12 National Security Complex. You'll see the bullets listed: uranium, center of excellence. We also have a heavy reliance on lithium for our parts, and that is also the source of lithium processing for the complex. A little about Michelle. I don't have any dirt on any of these folks, so I have to go strictly by the bio. But Michelle has been a longtime member of the community. She spent at least 22 years working specifically at the Y12 site. Prior to her current role, she served 2 years as Chief Operating Officer for CNS. And prior to that, she was the deputy enterprise manager. She has a wealth of experience at both sites and can speak to the challenges associated with legacy systems and trying to, in some cases, do heroic operational work to keep the old legacy systems going as we transition in other parts of the enterprise from old to new. Michelle holds a Bachelor of Science from the Turbo University in La Crosse, Wisconsin, and yes, their nickname is the V-Hawks. She also has a Master of Science in Radiological Engineering from the University of Florida, more traditional mascot, the Gators. Let's see. Next, Eric Wallerman, and yes, he is over 21 years old. I'm just kidding there. Eric comes to us. He is a Honeywell executive with lots of experience in the aerospace side of the house. He is the president of the Honeywell operation at Kansas City plant, what we refer to now as the National Security Campus at Kansas City. What you need to know about Kansas City, it's relatively unique. It is our center of excellence for all things non-nuclear component manufacturing. Eric and his team have their hands full. The site we're on, the site we occupy is a lease facility that was intended to be, projected to be, and planned to be covering about a system or a system and a half worth of work at any one time. And right now, today, Eric and his folks are managing up to 5 systems, weapon systems that need to be modernized. So very large and increasing scope there, lots of activity, and Eric and his team are doing a terrific job. A little bit about Eric. I did have to look a little deeply into his background. Prior to being in the Honeywell location he's in, as head of the Federal Management and Technologies Organization, he had a long career in a number of different locations in Honeywell Aerospace. He at one point led global customer service operations for aerospace customer and product support organization at Honeywell. He has a Bachelor's of Science in Industrial Engineering and Master's in Industrial Engineering, both from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, so he's a Badger. He also has a certificate from Embry-Riddle in Atlanta. I think they're in Georgia, actually. You can correct me there. And that is Eric's background. So last but not least, Savannah River site. So Savannah River site, I mentioned up front, our Tritium enterprise is largely housed there, although we rely on a supply chain that includes Tennessee Valley Authority reactors and the Watts Bar plant. Stuart's operation has a very mature organization that covers a wide variety of activity. I'll let him speak to it. For defense programs, we rely on tritium operations and TP bar extractions. And significantly, as I mentioned earlier, we're trying to establish a new mission for plutonium pit manufacturing at that site in the next 10 years. Stuart's background, if I have this right, Stuart, you can correct me. He has had a lot of background. Again, all these folks have had over 30 years of experience. Stuart has 35 years experience working in the DOE complex. Prior to his current position, he was Vice President of Operations for Fluor's Government Group in their environmental and nuclear business line. He was also President and Project Manager at the Savannah River Remediation LLC and Executive Director for Spent Fuel Management at Sellafield in the UK. So he also has an interesting academic background, Bachelor of Science from Clarkson College of Technology in Potsdam, New York, and they are the Golden Knights. So probably a copyright issue ongoing in the courts with the new hockey team out in Vegas. So that is your panel, folks, and I'll be quiet and listen because I'm interested to hear from them, but these folks are on the front lines of manufacturing challenges as we know them for the enterprise and are doing a terrific job partnering because everything they do is interconnected and critical to our mission success. So with that, I'm going to be quiet and listen. Back to you, Jeff and Peter.
Okay, to lead off, I'd like to introduce Eric Wallerman, who's the president of Honeywell Federal Manufacturing and Technologies. Eric?
Thanks, Jeff and Peter. NNSA, Mike, thanks for the opening comments. Yes, I'm still a Packer fan and living in Chiefs country too. So, but I appreciate AMWA and the Mitchell Institute for providing us the opportunity to have the discussion today. It's a little bit about the Kansas City National Security Campus. The National Security Campus, we refer to it as KCNSE, is steeped in a rich history managing and operating through Honeywell. And then its predecessor companies, Allied Signal, Bendix King, Honeywell supported this mission since 1949, since it started. So as a new leader in the organization, I'm constantly impressed with the passion and the mission, the workforce here. And it's great to see that what I've experienced outside of Honeywell, I can also see here brought into what we do inside our doors every day. So a little bit about what we do here is, we're a multi-mission engineering manufacturing enterprise, delivering trusted national security products and government services. We have a $1.6 million annual budget across several locations. So as Mike alluded, there is a BOTS campus here, and then we have some additional locations in Kansas City, as well as in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Most of advanced manufacturing takes place here in Kansas City at our BOTS campus, which it consists of 1.5 million square feet, which also includes an additional 350,000 square feet of a sensitive compartmentalized information facility, also known as a SCIF. With the increase of our product growing demands, which I'll get to in a minute, we continue to grow with additional manufacturing and office spaces, also with the number of employees. So when I came, as some may refer, I'm a COVID baby because I started the organization here in Kansas City during the pandemic. So quite an interesting onboarding and a great time to figure out how to lead in the enterprise. We had 4,800 employees. We're currently around 5,500 with plans growing to 6,000 here before the end of the year. So we've seen unprecedented growth, during a pandemic, and then it's been a unique challenge to continue operating and staying in touch with our workforce. And I'll go into that a little later as well. So I'd like to thank everyone on the panel, Michelle, Stuart, Mike, and the team here, and Mark, of course, can't forget Mark, for their support in what we do in our nuclear deterrence mission, providing a safe, secure, reliable, and effective product. So we like to say it's one mission, one ecosystem across multiple locations, and I think that falls very much in line with one NNSA type thinking. We support the nuclear security enterprise by manufacturing and procuring 80% of the non-nuclear components, or 80% of the components that go into a nuclear weapon, and it's the non-nuclear components. In close partnership with NNSA and then our corresponding Kansas City field office, we continue to modernize the stockpile and provide innovative solutions to develop our nuclear weapons programs. And so the programs include the W76-1, the W88 Alt-370, the B61-12, the W80-4, and the W87-1. In Albuquerque, our New Mexico operations, as we refer to them, support the Secure Transporter, SGT, for the Office of Secure Transportation. And in there, we also support the next generation of that transporter called the Mobile Guardian Transporter, or MGT. We collaborate with design agencies, so that being all the agencies, and partner with NNSA sites and universities and other organizations to strengthen and enhance our science, technology, and engineering capabilities. So most notably would be Sandia National Labs, being the non-nuclear components laboratory. But we also have significant projects that we do that support Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, as well as Los Alamos. So very, very close relationships in working together with those labs. Overall, KCNSE is sustaining over 20 programs currently, or systems, starting with new production capabilities, things in development, or even looking at next generation systems. This is a wide variety and it is growing fast. Perhaps too many to list in a limited time here today. However, we have several working initiatives and partnerships to drive producibility, or some may say manufacturability, but we like to use the word producibility of our systems and processes to essentially be production ready by the first production unit. So being a production capable product once it's ready to enter in production. So we have growing partnerships at the advanced and exploratory level to drive producibility in our process at the concept phase, in initiatives, to get earlier into production. An example being that is our polymer enclave. If you were part of this session a few weeks back when Kim Budell briefed a little bit about that enclave activity we have in Livermore. We also partnering in digital engineering with the labs and many others. So a key strategic initiative here at our site is digital transformation. We're transforming into the digital age to increase the speed, agility, and improve data management and more. So this calls for increased communications, analytics, and information flow. So you can think of things that are related to our product, but in the way that when it would be maybe from a 2D drawing into a model-based design definitions, or you can think of it as how you gain efficiencies in your operations on how you better run a supply chain. But we got to balance that in this environment. Being the sensitivity of the information we have, we got to work very closely with the security, the cyber security, as well as how we manage our suppliers as well and engage with them. So we're increasing our abilities to seamlessly exchange information with our lab partners, evolving cutting edge data and information and analytic tools to reduce time for cycles of learning, accelerate resource requirement, prediction and development, and increase the flexibility to be rapid, to meet the rapidly evolving challenges. So some of our goals in partnering with our laboratories is, to develop less environmentally impactful materials. And we've seen that through our history, even through the transition we had from the Bannister plant to Bots in bringing out some of the chemicals. Enhancing the understanding of new production inspection techniques. So bringing in, industry standards or bringing those up to a level above industry and applying them into our environment. Always a focus on reducing cost or time or speed of schedule, as well as, the complexity to be able to have something producible in our next generation components. Reducing risk by applying design for manufacturing principles at the early stages of design concept, and continuing to increase the speed and flexibility, whether it's through simulation or chemical microfluids, 3D printing, and more. In addition to our nuclear weapons program support, the KCNSC is also home to our global security aspects, as well as our supply chain management center. So the global security business is out of the Kansas City campus with the NNSA and DOE-IN oversight. And this is a multi-mission engineering and manufacturing enterprise that complements very well with our support of our weapons program. Providing service to trusted national security partners, as well as government services, and includes a fabrication shop, as well as a vehicle depot down at the Albuquerque campus. We also have the SCMC. You may have heard from the SCMC in the last year, but ultimately SCMC supports the entire NNSA as well as the greater DOE across 22 sites to enhance the contractor acquisition process through efficient, effective, and strategically driven enterprise-wide sourcing and procurement solutions. And last year, where you may have heard, was the SCMC celebrated $1 billion of total savings since its inception, and was able to deliver a big fake check to our administrator at the time. So it was a great recognition of the efforts they've put in place to help save our taxpayer dollars. So a little bit about our M&O. So KCNSC is managed and operated by Honeywell, Federal Manufacturing and Technologies, LLC. It's uniquely the only site solely operated by Honeywell FMNT and it's operating under a business within Honeywell called Honeywell Federal Solutions. And then Honeywell Federal Solutions has site M&O partnerships with Sandia, Savannah River, as well as the Nevada sites. So as I mentioned earlier, or as was mentioned earlier by Mike and myself, I was appointed to the role of president here, and I've been with Honeywell 16 years. I supported a variety of manufacturing businesses as well as customer service in a bunch of different states as well as overseas. So many of Honeywell systems, methods of improvement are applied to the management here at the Kansas City National Security Campus, including lean manufacturing, driving improvements within our supply base and supply chain, new product introduction, and as Honeywell likes to refer the Honeywell operating system, which is their Six Sigma continuous improvement mindset that's been brought into this business. These business practices from Honeywell are creating better integration with our partnership with the labs and the NNSA, and by creating an open dialogue, early engagement in design and a solution-driven ideas. From a growth impacts and the change to our environment that we've seen. So as was mentioned earlier, we've experienced unprecedented growth. We've seen several initiatives take place to manage these challenges. We have numerous short and long range planning initiatives with the NNSA. But with our growing workforce, we've doubled since 2014. We were at 2,400 employees, and we're now well over 5,000. It's required us to look for new manufacturing space as well as office space. And we'll be, I'll say, christening some new manufacturing space this fall in a place located just down the road from our facility. But we'll continuing to balance our space needs with the workload needs as we move forward. And then, as like many employers, we found productivity didn't taper off when we were forced to really challenge ourselves on what we could do at home and at work. We were very fortunate to have some great safety protocols and partnerships across all the NNSA sites to be able to continue working through the pandemic and really ensure the safety for our whole workforce. But it's allowed us to think through that we could operate in a hybrid model and some remote work as we look in our planning going forward. With all the hiring that we've had, we have 63% of our workforce, and it's very similar to the other sites in the NNSA that have less than 5 years experience. So we've seen the graybeards transition out and a new demographic come into our workplace that's going to be supporting our current programs today and our programs in the future. So it's very important for us to make sure we have programs in place to help keep that talent around and be able to apply those lessons learned from one program to another. So we're focused on innovation and engagement and knowledge preservation, inclusion, diversity, equity, acceptance, bringing robust systems from our corporate parent into how do we look at succession planning, looking at critical skills, developing a bench, development plans, creating good career paths within our environment here. And we've even seen opportunities where we can, embed people across the NNSA, partnering very closely with universities, internship programs, and we continue to have great conversion rates, and then partnering within our community and what we do in workforce planning. And then within our onboarding, we have a manufacturing innovation center to help train and qualify our workforce and get them the skills they need to be successful in our environment. So our supply chain, as we continue to grow our business, we're expanding our manufacturing capabilities. We must mention, there are efforts underway in our integrated supply chain to make sure we have the right suppliers making the right things as we prepare for our future going forward to execute the NNSA mission. Now, we've grown in our supply chain. We used to have 55% of the product content coming from suppliers. We're now at 70% today. Quality and capability and forging good relationships and understanding what risk is out there and managing that risk and what we do within procurement, making sure we have the quality and engineering and evaluations in place. So in conclusion, I'll leave you with the Kansas City campus or Kansas City plant. has really come a long way, and today operating at a very modern facility. So we're fortunate at that aspect with what we have here, but we're going to continue to evolve to meet those nuclear deterrence needs, look for the efficiencies and improvements that we've continued to build and gain as we move forward. And then visitors would say, people are amazed with the science and engineering and technology advances across all of our campuses. But there is this general perception about manufacturing today that it's dirty and the blue collar environment. Some people think maybe we just make thermostats, or there's a history here in Kansas City that we're a washing machine plant because that was kind of the code back in the 50s. But we really want to be part of the community, an employer of choice, and we spend a lot of effort investing back into the community. We put $1 million annually back into our community, looking at a strategic workforce development, STEM education, scholarships, community partners from our chamber to the local schools. My leadership team's on 30 different advisory boards between Kansas City and Albuquerque, and we're really looking for our people to engage in the community. We offer 40 hours of paid time for our salaried employees to go give back and really help get that future workforce engaged in our mission. So it's been a pleasure to give some comments here in Kansas City, and look forward to the rest of the discussion. But I'll give it back to you guys. Thanks.
Thank you, Eric. And now we're over to Mark Martinez. Mark is the President, Mission Support and Test Services. It's the organization that manages the Nevada National Security Site. Mark?
Okay, I should have a few slides. I think I should be able to get through quickly and maybe catch us up a little bit here in time. So I'm Mark Martinez. I'm the President of Mission Support and Test Services, and just want to thank everybody for the opportunity to explain who we are. I always feel a little bit like a third wheel, if you will, because we're not a national laboratory and we're not a production site. And I appreciate Mike Thompson at least coloring us a little different color. So it is it's a little bit different. So let's go to the next slide. There we go. So what is we are the Nevada National Security Site. I will slip up, because I have a long history in the NNSA, I will slip up and call it the Nevada Test Site. I only guarantee it. But the name was changed to maybe better reflect what we're doing. So, the test site is 70 years old. So in 1951, President Truman authorized the Nevada proving grounds out here to be the place of choice where we would do nuclear testing. And in February of that year, they dropped honestly, we kind of jokingly say the first atomic bomb was dropped on the United States. It happened to be by the United States doing it, and it was a place called Frenchman Flats. But since then, the test site has gone through a remarkable series of growth and things that were going on at the test site. There were places where people could, basically almost live. There was a post office and all these things. There's a huge amount of activity. Then the moratorium hit in 1992. And the Nevada test site, it was the test site at that time, had to figure out what it was going to be. And this is important because it's large. As I showed there, you could take all the sites in the NNSA complex and fit them inside the Nevada National Security or the test site itself. So it's large. It's bigger than the state of Rhode Island. One of the features is it's remote. And so, it is something where we've got to get people to and from this. It's probably 60 miles northwest of
60 square miles.
Las Vegas. It is, however, I don't know how purposeful this was, but it is somewhat centrally located between the two nuclear weapons design laboratories, Los Alamos and Livermore. Those are the two that primarily needed to test their designs and their what they were thinking about, and so it is somewhat centrally located, and that remains to be an asset. And another thing that's kind of interesting about it is it's secure for a number of reasons. But we control in 3 dimensions. We control the terrain and what goes on there, but we also control our airspace. We are surrounded by Air Force, but we're a little island where they can't fly over us unless we approve it. Nobody can fly into our airspace unless we approve it. And so we control that 3rd dimension, the Z-axis, if you will, of airspace, which makes us quite attractive for a number of programs that need to test things. Right now, there's a surge, a lot of interest in UASs, and we do have the ability to fly those there and do experimental work on those. And one of the things they like about it is we can crash them there, and you can take them down. So there's a lot of interest in doing that kind of work there. We have a security category 1 HAZCAT 2 nuclear facility. That may not mean much to many people, but that's a fully functioning, full capability, full ability to do the different kind of programmatic work you want to do for plutonium and highly enriched uranium. And so that's a place we call the device assembly facility, and it gets a lot of interest, especially as there is a big demand in the complex for that kind of work, especially right now, and increasing pressure being put on existing capabilities with the pit production missions. And so we offer some abilities there. So one last thing I want to say about this chart here is this, you'll look is that everything, all those hot spots, you can see the different activities that are going on. They're in a, I kind of think of it as a straight line. We call it the Mercury corridor. Originally, all those things were separated out. If you're going to do a nuclear weapons test, you wanted to make sure that you weren't taking out some other capability. And so you would spread all those things out. You would have you would have test sites all over this large area. Now, as we're not doing that kind of work, the desire is to bring them in and put them on this Mercury corridor so I don't have to supply power and other kind of utilities broadly across the site. So we're running, in fact, we have a significant line item project right now where we're running power, 138 kV lines up this corridor to make them more current and also increase the power loading for some experimental work I'll be talking about here in a second. So one of the efforts we have underway is sort of a consolidation. You want to put everything on this line, if you will, this Mercury corridors, because that's where we want the experimental activity. That's not to say you can't work off that. It's just that if you work off that, you're agreeing that you're not going to get the same level of support. Let's go to the next slide. So this really, it's my attempt to try to explain the importance of the Nevada National Security Site. It has been said by many people that all roads to certification of the nation's nuclear weapons stockpile flows through Nevada. And this is, I'll try to explain this here. There are experimental test facilities that are absolutely key to answering questions about the stockpile today. The one I want to focus on, is a little bit short on time, is a project that's coming along where we are going to put $1 billion world-class accelerator underground at a place called UNA. We're going to put that underground, which will answer the questions of the future to avoid the need to resume full-scale testing. This allows us to answer questions, or I shouldn't say us, but allows the laboratories to answer questions about aging, about different production techniques and technologies, because you're able to look at the performance of what they're looking at, the experiment, to what we would call late time kind of things. And so when you're dealing with plutonium is very dense. And so to be able to really understand what it's doing, you need high energy photons to be able to penetrate and get the X-rays through, to be able to see what's going on and be able to really make sure that what we are experiencing there is what we are modeling with our supercomputers. I am hoping that the laboratories in their session talked a little about the need for, the exascale computing and other kind of things that they're doing as they model the weapons performance, and then they are able to look at it compared to real data, which is critical for them answering questions about manufacturing techniques, about aging materials, and things like that. And so it helps inform the decision makers on what they need to do. So with that, you can see the list of facilities that we have there. The UNA complex is going to be very, very busy. Scorpius is that big accelerator that we've got coming. We currently are operating with our Cygnus test bed, and so it's a beehive of activity. It used to be a shot every year or so. Now we're getting multiple shots a year. So a lot of things going on, and then the other activities that are going on out in Nevada. I won't get into those for the sake of time. So 30 years of stockpile certification without underground testing. And I think that that is a real credit to the stockpile stewardship approach and the mission and the laboratories and the work that's done at the Nevada National Security Site. And I will stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Now over to Michelle Reichert. Michelle is the president and CEO of Consolidated Nuclear Security, which is the organization that oversees the operations at the Pantex plant in Amarillo, Texas, and the Y-12 plant in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. Michelle?
Good to see you again, Jeff. Thank you. If you guys could go ahead and pull up my slides. All right, just go ahead to the first page, please. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I recognize a lot of the names on the list of participants today, and it's good to be with all of you again, even if it's virtually. Mike did cover this graphic earlier, but we like to call this graphic "All Roads Lead to Pantex." Sorry, Mark, but we also steal that vernacular because truly, as was previously said, all the nuclear weapons components come to Pantex for final assembly and acceptance before they go out to the ultimate customer, which is the Department of Defense. So let's go ahead and go to the next page, please. So the Y-12 National Security Complex located in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. It's on about 811 acres, 343 buildings, give or take at any one time. We've got a lot of facilities undergoing D&D right now. If you look at the photo there on the top, you see kind of that reddish color facility, which was known as the biology complex, run by the Office of Science historically. That is no more on our landscape. It is gone, thanks to our friends from UCOR, making way space available for future facilities, in particular our lithium production facility that we desperately need in order to support our future missions. Also, we've got the uranium processing facility, which is under construction up in the upper portion of that picture now, which is really going to serve as the foundation for Y-12 for its uranium mission in the future. Y-12 itself focuses on several core capabilities, as Mike discussed earlier. One is uranium processing and applications, both for weapons as well as in naval nuclear fuel applications. Y-12 is the heart of lithium processing, and our facilities for lithium are aged considerably. They're World War II facilities and in desperate need of replacement. And working on that right now, and that biology complex coming down is one key step in making that happen. And then Y-12 also responsible for assembly, disassembly largely of the secondaries and quality evaluation as such. And then we do nuclear non-proliferation work in support of our nation as well as our allies out of our Y-12 site. Pantex there on the bottom. Normally, just for those of you who've been to Amarillo, Texas, you know it's not that green. But maybe this year it is because we've had a lot of rain, but we're in the high plains desert of Texas on about 18,000 acres, but largely on about 2,000 primary acres that we use to support the mission. 622 buildings on site. Several buildings are coming down in what we call the north portion of the Pantex site. We've got a lot of facility replacement activity going on, everything from facilities currently under construction to under design, largely supporting our high explosive center of excellence and our HE mission. Pantex as well, weapons assembly and disassembly, but for full up weapons prior to going out to the Department of Defense and on their way back in. We're also the HE manufacturer for the nuclear security enterprise. So we manufacture, test HE, synthesis, formulation, pressing, machining, all applications that are done here in Amarillo. And then certainly special nuclear material security and management is key to both of our sites. Right now, CNS is the managing and operating contractor of Y12 and Pantex. You may have heard that the contract is being recompeted, but we're proud to run these sites, and we're a combination of Bechtel, Leidos, Orbital ATK, and SOC. Let's go ahead and go to the next page, please. All right, the workforce at Pantex, much like Eric said, we've been growing pretty significantly over the last couple of years. In particular, we're nearly 10,000 strong, and probably within the next couple of months, we will go over 10,000 employees. About 1,000 new hires last year, 1,000 new hires plus coming on board this year. Of our employees, about 4,000 represented by 9 unions, 700 subcontractors, average age of 46, average years of service 12. With the amount of hiring we're doing, that average years of service is being driven down pretty dramatically year over year. And much like Eric talked about, a lot of work not only to bring folks on board and get them trained, but during COVID, a lot of those folks in the last year came on board virtually, which had to be a bit of a surreal experience for all of those new hires to not actually be able to work in their work environment with their colleagues face to face. So that's a challenge we've all been working through over the last year. Also of note on this graphic is the number of people that we have, or the percentage that are retirement eligible, both currently and in the next 5 years. That is of concern. So knowledge preservation management, hiring, knowledge transfer, and training are really pivotal activities that we're focusing on right now to make sure we have the workforce that we need for the future. Next page, please. So overall, the mission of the two sites is certainly to support the nuclear deterrent and provide nuclear fuel for the Navy and reduce the threat, global threat, with a lot of our non-proliferation activities. Really proud of the quality of the work that our employees perform and deliver on behalf of the nation. And they have been doing that for over 70 years. But we got to make sure we're ready to continue to deliver into the long-term future. So if we could go to the next slide. An area of focus right now, and we actually came up with this messaging pre-COVID, which is adapt and deliver, but I don't think we ever understood how much all of us would have to adapt in order to deliver in the last year. But it's certainly been vitally important for us to really focus not only on getting the current mission done, but really to set these sites up for the long-term mission and the long-term mission growth. So if we could go on to the next page, please. So the workload, as some of my colleagues discussed, we've got a lot of overlapping programs on our horizon, unlike anything I've ever seen in my 30+ years in this business. So making sure not only that we've got the employee base hired, trained, and ready to go, but as Mike said, our aging infrastructure, a lot of it is greater than that 50-year mark, and making sure that we've got the infrastructure and the equipment and the facilities necessary to support this kind of growth. So part of our aspirational goals under Adapt and Deliver is really to be responsive to our nation and the military, and to be able to support any weapon on any day as our nation needs. And so three big challenges that we saw as we were really doing our gap analysis of what it would take to support the long-term mission delivery. The production of binary alloys, special materials, and high explosives were key to making those happen. Either those areas had been allowed to atrophy over time because they've not been needed or used in recent weapons production, or they were at high risk just because of the age of the facilities and the equipment. So a lot of focus has been ongoing in these areas to both reduce risk and have us capable, agile, and having the capacities necessary to support the future growth. Next page, please. Another area of focus for us is digital transformation, especially in our environment, which makes it even more difficult. I'll confess, this is my first Zoom meeting. I had to get a special computer in a special area set up because we don't Zoom, believe it or not, in our environment. So because we are so constrained, being able to really capitalize on the technologies that are available to most production industries is a challenge. So we've been working with our colleagues across the complex and then within our own staff to really figure out how do we have more mobile worker capabilities, take our training into virtual reality versus always hands-on. Cloud computing and wireless, classified wireless would be great from our perspective. Model-based engineering and the smart procedures. And with all of the capital projects we've got coming up, uranium processing facility, lithium, our new fire station in EOC, how can we really capitalize on the rapidly changing digital environment, but at the same time, in a world of ransomware attacks and other things, certainly protect our nation and protect our vital missions. So it's another challenge that we're working our way through to make sure that we can run these sites as efficiently as we possibly can. Next page, please. So given we talked about COVID over the last period, Texas also, as you may recall, had a major cold snap in the middle of the winter. And our site manager was getting about hourly calls about, having to shut everything down because the region was really suffering from the major cold snap. We were able to meet all the commitments to the military in spite of both COVID and the cold. And a lot of that was adapting and delivering, finding ways to initiate COVID controls within CDC guidance, but keep working. And I'm so proud of the team because in the last 2 years or so, we've completed the 76-2, the W80-1, all 369. Completed the B61 Mod 12 and W88 all first production units. Key milestones for 2 other upcoming programs. Continued to build the uranium processing facility throughout COVID. And we've broken ground on a new emergency operations center and fire station at Y12, changing our west end protected area at Y12. And then a construction and groundbreaking for a new flexible support facility here at Pantex. In addition, now a new high explosive science and engineering facility. And we've reached a major milestone. We've now, in cumulative fashion, taken down more than 100 facilities at Pantex and Y12 while advancing our uranium and lithium missions. And our contract is also a cost savings contract. So at the same time, we've been able to deliver and meet our significant nuclear security milestones. We've also saved the US taxpayer more than $1 billion over the life of this contract. Next page. So at Pantex and Y12, and we are a vital part of the nuclear weapons enterprise. We've got a long-term future in support of our nation and her allies. Got a very diverse workforce and continuing to hire and fill vacancies and making sure that we can transfer that knowledge and the unique capabilities and skills of our workforce over to the next generation. Continue to provide fuel for the nuclear navy and reduce global nuclear threat. But overall, the focus on right now is delivery of the mission today and ensure that we're set up and established to support the nation as we go forward. So with that, I think that concludes my remarks, and I guess it's back to you, Mr. Crater.
Thank you, Michelle. Appreciate your remarks. Now we'll hear from Stuart Mcvein, President CEO of the Savannah River Nuclear Solutions. That's the entity that manages the operations of the Savannah River site in South Carolina. Stuart?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. Appreciate that. So we're a little bit of an outlier or unique situation within the complex. I'm actually an EM contractor, environmental management, and one of the scopes of work that we perform is for NNSA, and we actually do quite a bit of work for NNSA, a lot of it in non-proliferation in facilities that are operated by the EM arm of the Department of Energy. So legacy facility, legacy site with 9 major operating areas, most of which is being cleaned up and decommissioned to put it into a position where we're dealing with that legacy. So the primary legacy here on site is liquid waste left over from spent fuel reprocessing days as part of the weapons mission back over the last 70 years that's still up and operating. So those facilities continue to operate and perform that non-proliferation mission. We get into the weapons program, much smaller footprint. So the site's 310 square miles, tritium facilities on 29 acres. So very small footprint, 3 major operating facilities within that fence that meets the needs of delivering tritium for the weapons program, both for new assembly of weapons at Pantex, like Michelle was talking about. You know, all roads lead to Pantex for weapons assembly, but then also returns directly to the military. We both receive reservoirs and return reservoirs, the small containers of gas that house the tritium gas for their needs, and they service them themselves. From the 3 facility standpoint, 2 of the facilities over the last 25 years have been upgraded and replaced. The last one in 2004, the new tritium extraction facility. And so our 3rd facility is still the 70-year-old manufacturing facility. And you may have heard about the tritium finishing facility, TFF, which is a new facility to do the final replacement of facilities. And currently we're looking at a 10-year program to complete the design and the build out and startup of that facility. In the meantime, lots of infrastructure work going on inside that 29 acres within those other facilities, and as a bridging strategy for the tritium finishing facility, since it'll be another 10 years, so we'll be 80 years into that manufacturing plant's life cycle. So we spent a lot of time looking at infrastructure upgrades, both inside the fence as well as for the site infrastructure that supplies the services to that 29-acre footprint, whether it's electrical distribution or fire water or water that can be used for drinking, sanitary sewer, the kinds of things that need to make up being able to keep buildings running on a 24/7 basis. That tritium facility not only extracts and returns tritium to the DoD, but it also does a couple other things. We do surveillance and monitoring of the reservoirs themselves as part of the certification program that's been spoken to earlier today. We feed all that data through that certification program, as well as we have a waste product that comes off of tritium extraction as part of the gas cleaning operations, which is helium-3. We provide a lot of helium-3 to the Office of Science for nuclear detection capabilities for their instrumentation. As Mike said earlier today, tritium, while it's a very long-term and stable operation, we've had a lot of change in the last few years. Like many others, demand has gone up significantly. A lot of workforce has retired, and a lot of infrastructure has had to be upgraded and modernized in order to be able to maintain the facilities in an operational mode. I've heard the analogy. It's like changing the tire on the vehicle while it's driving down the road. The facility could only take very short periods of maintenance outage windows in order to be able to do those infrastructure upgrades. So I've got a team that's very adept at being able to operate the plant and then change out large scale sections of the plant simultaneously. So we've learned a lot over the last few years. And of course, we've got the same concerns over knowledge transfer and preservation that a lot of the other folks have already talked about. So I'll skip there. If you step outside Tritium for just a minute, that's the stable operation that we've had going for a long time. The next and newest one on the horizon, of course, is the Plutonium Processing Facility. So a mimic of UPF, only for plutonium. We've been in the plutonium production business for a long time, just not in the pit manufacturing business. And we've just completed CD1. I'm sure people saw the news, which is that first gate that you proceed through once you're turned loose to start design efforts. We hit that gate at about the 34% design complete stage, which is really good for a 2-year project goal, and achieved CD1. And now we're off moving forward with our CD2 and 3 design deliverables for that project. Very large scale project, needs to be accelerated. We need to try and trim some time off the schedule that we built out, but we're making really good progress on that design effort. And I think we're going to be able to find ways to trim time out of the construction schedule that'll let us get that facility up and running earlier. I know everybody's very eager to make that happen. We do have a very strong production mindset here at Savannah River. That's what this facility or site has done for 70 years. And I think bringing that to bear on a facility like SRPPF and being able to deliver on that project is fully within our reach and capability. And with that, I'm going to stop there because we are running short on time and we've gone just a little bit over. I'm going to turn it back over to you, Jeff, because all the rest of the things will just be repeats of stuff you've already heard about some of the challenges around supply chain and human resource management. So I'll stop there and turn it back over to you. Thanks.
David, go ahead.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thank you so much to our speakers. Just such valuable information. As our colleague Camilla posted in the chat, we're going to extend this portion for about another 6 or 7 more minutes because we want to take a few questions from folks in our audience. If you have a question for any of our panelists, please post them in the Q&A function, which you'll find next to the chat function at the bottom. At least on mine, it's at the bottom of the screen, but you'll see it next to chat. There's a Q&A function. Please put your question there along with your name and your organization. That's very much appreciated. And let's start though. I heard, Michelle, you talked about all roads lead to Pantex. I'm curious to know how smooth of a drive it is. And so my question is, we heard from each of the individual plant managers, and appreciate that, but what's the coordination like? Coordination between all of you and coordination with the other important parts of the system, the labs, the Department of Defense, et cetera. How are we all working together these days? And Michelle, why don't you talk about how, if things are being received well at Pantex, maybe it's going smoothly, but what do we need to watch out for here?
Quick answer, it is going smoothly. And we've had many decades of practice as colleagues across the enterprise. So we've been able to continue to get the materials and the parts that we've needed from our partners, as well as support from the design laboratories. OST plays a key role in delivering to us and to the Department of Defense, and they've continued to operate seamlessly as well. So short answer is no issues, no problems, and working well together.
Okay, very good. Mike Thompson, do you have a perspective of this? You have to manage over all of it. What are some of the concerns or issues? I mean, we just had a year where it was difficult to talk to anybody thanks to a global pandemic, but how are things operating? How are things running?
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity, David. So I agree with Michelle from the standpoint of looking at I'll just say for the last year and a half with COVID, Dr. Burden put out guidance to all the sites telling what the program priorities were, but the top priority was health and safety of employees. And because the pandemic had a significant vote that still changes, each site team, both federal and M&O partner, had to make adjustments on the fly, I would say, to meet mission while keeping everyone safe. And that looked different at every site, and we were okay with that. And despite all that, I would say one of the outcomes that will be celebrated at Michelle's Pantex plant next week is we're able to get first production unit on the W88 L370 with all the COVID challenges. And that's a all of enterprise kind of a deliverable. It's not any one or two sites. Every site played a significant role. So that tells us that, yes, it's not easy. Yes, there are challenges, but given the right amount of flexibility at the site level and knowing that, we may have to make some accommodations, I would say the supply chain upstream of us had some challenges in terms of delivering, we were a month or two late on certain things, but overall the mission priorities were executed.
Okay, very good. I appreciate it. Let me hand it back over to Peter. Peter, did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I wanted to say hello to a couple people. The nominee for the administrator for NNSA is with us today. Jill, thank you for joining us. I also wanted to say hello to Madeline Cretin, who was the former deputy director or deputy administrator of NNSA. Want to say thank you and hello to her. I would like the Eric and Stuart and Mark to answer a question, which they in this round. Our commander of Stratcom, Admiral Reichert, gave an interview not too long ago in which he said the United States can't build a new nuclear weapon from scratch, basically. And he got a lot of criticism from particularly the disarmament community, but I'm not in the business of trying to pick a fight. What I would like to do is explain, what did he mean? I think I know what he meant by that. What did he mean by that? And what are you doing to resolve that? Because part of this is we've brought our stockpile down to about 3,800 warheads. We deploy about 1,550. We stopped nuclear testing. We did the national, NNSA was formed and established to do the stockpile stewardship program. You're now doing a service life extension program on a number of our warheads. On the platform side, which I deal a lot with, we are literally took a holiday, as General Harensack said. The last deployment of a platform was 1996 when we stopped the B-2 bomber. We stopped Ohio class in 1992, and we stopped the Peacekeeper in 1991. The next time we put something in the field will be 2029. So that was the platform, but we also had this kind of a pause we did with respect to warhead production. I want to start with Eric and then go to Mark and go to Stuart. Explain what the Admiral meant by that when he was talking about the fact that we're on the process of moving towards the ability to produce nukes, but we're not there yet.
So I didn't have the luxury of listening to that, but I mean, for me, it's, I need a supply chain that can support the needs of the enterprise, right? And I need a workforce and the facilities ready. And right now, we have significant mission in front of us right now. I'm going to make sure I have the right resources, people, so then if there is a time that we need to adapt, we're ready. And we're there for, our DoD counterparts as well as our labs, wherever we need to support.
Yeah. I don't know what he meant by that. I'm not privy to what he's thinking, but if I were to have said that, my thinking would be that by policy, we're not supposed to be designing new, or, and it's more centered on that because, in my experience in the weapons complex, new can mean various different things. And so, I think a life extension program is pretty close, exercises the large muscle groups that need to be exercised to be able to do that. So I don't know what he meant. I got to believe it was something about, we're not supposed to. The laboratories and others are, exercising those large muscles. We're in a pit production mode right now. So I don't know what he meant other than that, but I would say that the life extension programs are significant efforts that that challenge the laboratories, challenge the production complex in a way that I would believe that if called upon, the complex could respond. I guess the last point is we're not being asked to do it either. And
I understand. I think part of it, Mark, was he was
I'd leave it
talking
there.
about pit production as well, and the goal that you have between you to go the minimum of 30 to at least hopefully up to 80 pits per year being able to produce. Stuart, why don't you close us out?
Yeah, thanks, Peter. So yeah, if you jump past, we have just recently shown within this enterprise that we can build a modernized weapon, as Mike was just talking about, and you concentrate on pits. I think pit manufacturing is going to be the real challenge. And I can tell you that Savannah River and Lannel and Livermore are connected at the hip to look at what's our current capability, how can we ramp Lannel up and meet the 2026 timeline to move towards 30 pits a year, and then how can we bring Savannah River on using the Lannel processes, in 2030 or as close to 2030 as we can get. So Lannel's making great progress. We're connected with them to make sure that we're learning from them. We're using the exact same process equipment that they're using and just putting it into a different building that's much more sizable than the one that they've got available to them out there. So I think if you look at it from that perspective, that could be what he was referring to.
Over to you, David.
Hey, Peter, I think we're about out of time for this session. I wanted to thank again our distinguished panel. Such valuable information you shared with us today. It sounds like things are on a good track and it is a smooth road. So very glad to hear that. We look forward to seeing you again to talk about some of these issues in the near future. Thanks again to our audience for joining us today. For those of us joining the smaller group after, please join us immediately following the close of this session. Thanks, everybody.